The prosecution painted Kyle Rittenhouse as a vigilante, calling him a wannabe soldier who went looking for trouble. But at times, some of the prosecution's witnesses seemed to back up his claims of self-defense. So was this case winnable in Wisconsin? Wendy Patrick is a prosecutor and career trial attorney, and she is joining us live tonight. Wendy, always good to see you. So where are the holes in the prosecution's case on this one?
I have to tell you, it depends a lot on the law that this jury was given. Remember that it was a win for the prosecutor to have this law about provocation given to the jury. That's very important because that basically says if somebody goes into a crowd and provokes a dangerous or violent situation, they don't then get to avail themselves of self-defense. But that's what the jury had, and that's what they considered. And remember, when you're a trial lawyer, silence is not golden when you have a jury out. So finally, they started asking some questions. And one of the things they wanted to watch was that video footage. That video footage was an uphill battle for the prosecution. They did what they could with the evidence they had, and the jury spoke.
Well, did they overshoot on the charges they were after?
Well, remember that with that provocation instruction, a jury could have found the most important, the highest charge, which of course carried the life sentence. They could have found that if they found that the prosecutor beyond a reasonable doubt proved their case. It's impossible to second guess what another office does, because remember, as much as we'd like to, and it's fun, and everybody does it on television, we're not privy to all of the surrounding facts and circumstances that not only went into charging that case, but choosing the charges. Remember that it was mid-trial we had this discussion about, well, maybe we'll talk about lesser included offenses. Remember O.J. Simpson, that was all or nothing. It wasn't that case here, and that was important because as the evidence came out, sometimes it forces both sides to sort of regroup, as it did here, and decide what charges are ultimately going to go to that jury.
And we're not hearing from the prosecution tonight, but we are hearing from the defense. And so the defense attorney for Rittenhouse was critical of the prosecution in this case, saying they put people in the stand that they knew were lying and also changing their argument when it comes to that provocation defense. Let's listen in quickly here to the defense.
Justice is done when the truth is reached, and I don't know that it's set up to do that, but a prosecutor is supposed to seek the truth. It's not about winning, and this case became about winning.
Your thoughts on that this wasn't about the truth. According to that defense attorney, it was about winning.
There are lots of statements that are made post-trial, and there are lots of aspersions that are cast. We don't know. That's why most of the people that have commented on this case, and we have heard reaction from the courthouse to the White House, but much of that reaction, saved by the defense attorney, is made by some of the most prominent voices that didn't watch the trial, that didn't follow the evidence. It's almost impossible, unless you literally were in that courtroom, to follow the evidence. And even then, remember that some of the allegations made by the defense that were made in connection with asking twice for a mistrial were disputed by the prosecutor. So it's impossible to second guess these kinds of motives. And, I understand that emotions are so high. One thing that I think we all can agree on is that that jury was guided by evidence, not emotion. We have to believe the jury system works. That's what our own president said when he was asked to clarify some of the comments he'd made previously about the case. And that is one of the things that I think everybody agrees with, is the jury system should be allowed to function without influence from some of these loud outside voices.
And they did so for 26 hours. But I do want to ask you, a lot of people are critical of the prosecution and their work inside that courtroom. But what happens in that prosecutor's office and with this prosecutor? They must go back and review the case, review their arguments, review what happened. What is that process like after a case is lost?
Well, remember that in any office, any law enforcement agency that's charged a case, that's dealt with the case as a prosecution, everyone always goes back and analyzes. Defense attorneys do the same thing. Civil lawyers do the same thing. We learn from mistakes. We also learn from strategy, and we learn from novel situations. Remember, I'm glad you took us back to August of last year, because most of us have forgotten what it was like that fateful night in Kenosha. You not only showed the video footage, but you also showed some of the reality on the ground. We've forgotten what that's like, and that chaos, it was almost impossible to be able to tell who's who on that videotape without very careful measure and trying to really pull that thing apart. Remember, for the prosecution, it was about slowing down the action to portray Mr. Rittenhouse as having options. For the defense, it was about speeding up the action and making it all happening at once, which forced Mr. Rittenhouse to think very quickly. So it's, without actually having been there, as none of us were, it's really tough to do anything other than learn, listen, and hopefully they got to talk to the jurors afterwards and hear from them what convinced them in the long run that there wasn't proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
I think many of us interested in talking to them as well. Wendy, before I let you go, could Kyle Rittenhouse face civil suits moving forward?
He could, but I mean, think about what that would entail. I mean, if they couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt, sure, it's a lesser standard in civil court as a preponderance of the evidence, but could they even meet that standard? And then to what end? How much money does this 18-year-old have that could then be placed on the table to compensate these victims? Nothing will bring these victims back. And even though we talk clinically about the charges, my prayers are with the families of those victims and with the Kenosha community as they continue to heal.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.